A Better Heaven, short story. A biblical quote. He went up from there to Bethel, and while he was going up on the way, some small boys came out of the city and jeered at him, saying, "Go up, bald head." 2 Kings 2:23. Sister Jane Mellow's pale butter Volvo rolled with ecclesiastical silence over the crushed gravel road base, swinging by a hedge and rounding in a broad sweep to the bluestone steps of the historic St. Angelina of the Hills. It had an austere and Romanesque exterior, St. Angelina's, constructed from a local quarry by homesick pioneers as long ago as 1842. The gigantic ore crusher broke in 1928 and no one had the tools to fix it. The town died. The church remained. Rain had cleared overnight, but stripes of dark blue moisture still dappled the tower. The sister noted the manse, built in the colonial style, the pine forest in the background, and the public hall in decaying dark mustard weatherboards and lonesome sheets of corrugated iron. There was a tennis court, thick with weeds. There were also some old gravestones on the hill. When she stepped out of the car, she could smell the cool, turpentine air. The valley was good for apples and plums. It was a tranquil spot, a new demographic. The green-fingered urbanite, armed with degrees in planning, had only recently arrived. She made her way in past the 3 dead bodies, looking for Special Investigator Father X, the iffy Dominican, who had rung her upon the lustral dawn. "You really should come down and see this, Mello," he had reported. She carried her notebook and her recorder and her fond lamentations for Our Lady of Sunny Tripoli, patron saint of headaches and cranial contusions, and arrived with mid-morning's expectation. She found the cathedral interior more intimate than majestic. It wasn't quite quaint, but neither was it in the least imposing. Only a quarter of the stained glass medley was completed, with the Holy Family just half a donkey into Egypt, then half the Bethlehem scene, starry and brisk, and a double-sized white-faced Angelina in severe white marble looking down from the vestry side. The ceiling was neo-Gothic at least, but on a rural scale. For a moment she admired the tasteful inscription work along the choir stalls. "Mello!" called Father X across the nave. His name was Xavier McKinley, in his early 60s, wearing the plain grey coat that had made him almost famous. He was the well-known special investigator for someone quite close to the Pope. His mere presence suggested something weird. "Glad you're here," he called. "Come and look at this." There was a neo-Gothic echo filling up the whole nave length. "Hang on, Father," she said. She turned back and nodded to the recently deceased. "Have we identified them yet?" She was, of the 2 of them, especially interested in dead people. The father walked across. He pointed up to the clergyman hanging by his neck from the vaulted ceiling, along with a limp purple visage. "Monsignor Throsby, I'm afraid," the iffy Dominican did say. He pointed to the attractive middle-aged woman laying defunct in a pool of unholy blood just inside the transept. Catherine Mayfair O'Brien. And then to a portly middle-aged gentleman similarly. Her husband Tony. Then he summed up. Catherine Mayfair O'Brien, the parish secretary, her husband, treasurer, Monsignor Throsby, clergyman of course, the whole leadership of the parish. Tragic. At that time additional forensics arrived. A sterile van of young professionals in studious white coats armed with cameras from South Korea entered the church in a solemn line. "Do we know what happened?" asked the sister. She was hardened to the reality. Such scenes in tree-change cathedrals in cosy backwaters with cheap real estate were increasingly common. "I think you should see this first, Mello," the good father advised. From there he led her down the central aisle, out to one side to a service building at the rear. It made do as the vestry comfort zone and the place where the deacons played Scrabble. In effect, it was a staff room. X took her to one corner where the Monsignor had kept his desk. "Look what I found here, Mello," he said. He was notoriously astute. If clues lurked with anything but Trinitarian observation, he was there. If misdeeds were cloaked in pious torments, he was the confessor of choice. He opened the desk drawer. The distinctive orange cover of the 1970s original edition of Pastor Timberstill de Shaggin's The Omega Way, Why God Must Evolve, greeted their cautious gaze, as bold as an Augustinian fretting over free will. Taking it in, the sister had already drifted from the Monsignor's desk to the bookshelf nearby. The complete works of Hans Kung. She swung around. The Free Tibet sticker. The Moon Planting Guide beside the door out to the side garden. "By the Seven Sacraments," she said, "it's a hotbed of liberals," as it suddenly rose upon her. She was as crisp as a chilly baptism herself, and quickly summed it up. She had written a dissertation on the chemistry of holy water and had once had a vision of turbid purgatory. She was especially well versed in all the reasons to dislike Lutherans. "You've seen nothing yet, Mello," said the investigator. "Follow me." He led her across to the far door, but on the way stopped at the small refrigerator en passant. He opened it briskly. The reason was obvious at once. On the second shelf, "Tofu," he declared, and shut it again. The evidence was unfolding. "None of this is looking kosher," the good sister did comment, playing fast and loose with the old covenant for once. Father Xavier was non-committal. He merely raised an eyebrow. In the side chapel, the intrepid investigator, renowned for his nose for exactly such occult substantiations, had uncovered among the shiny vestments the brassy gadget to unlock the crypt below where bishops of yore were kept. It was a somewhat large expanse. It opened in a section in the tile flooring. Suddenly a stairway into the dark pits was revealed. "Mind your head, sister. Just follow me," said the father, as he stepped within and down and led the way. The sister followed, slightly apprehensive. As X knew well, she was, despite her serious qualifications in forensic theology, nauseous of the dark and of all its spiders. She considered it a noble gift, not a psychopathology. St. Oscar of Glommer's Reach was terrified of centipedes, she would say, and he'd cured a whole colony of lepers on his way to the Fourth Crusade. "How did I know you'd want to look down in the crypt?" she joked, rhetorical. "You're so predictable, Xavier." The father stepped deeper into the dark chamber. He acted concerned. "Am I, Jane? I'd hate to be predictable." She said it again. "You are so predictable, Xavier." He was grinning. He had known her ever since the Sixth Beatific Youth Convergence just outside of Barcelona, way back when their faith was sorely tested. Finally, he flicked a light and the room beneath was illumined. It seemed empty and clean. The bony waists of pious men remained within their caskets. X led her quickly to the other end. "It's over here," he directed. He was referring to a second brassy gadget, like the first, hidden in the sombre mosaic. It wasn't exactly a monstrance, but it was burnished like one, with a convenient hole in the middle. Mello was slightly puzzled. "How did you know it was hidden in the sombre mosaic?" she inquired. The father smiled. "You know me and brassy gadgets, Jane," he said. It was true. Brassy gadgets into hidden spaces was among the Padre's many specialities. Pulling thus, he stepped back, gave the gadget another twist. The wall departed and, Gloria in excelsis, Before their very eyes, the heavy stonework came apart and an elevator opened between the two. Said X in amazement. He looked at her. She moved to her higher senses and drifted dramatically into warning mode. High Gothic verticality. What a bizarre apparition. Who had hidden this in the solid masonry? What farther yearnings befit the sanctity of angels? Who installed the metal plates and pulleys? X, she stammered. He nodded. It was all okay. They stepped inside. The doors closed and the lift started to descend. The father explained. It seems, sister, that the Monsignor had developed some distinctive teachings based on the usual mishmash of half-truths and Gnostic extrapolations, such that characterises both heretics and whack jobs. Sister Mello was slightly surprised by this harsh tone. On past experience, she knew Father Xavier to be a first-class whack job himself, if not a heretic, in fact. It remained a mystery to her how someone of such questionable inclinations and iffy reputation could get to be special investigator for someone quite close to the Pope. And developed a following. Yes, apparently. It seems they got stuck on the Elohim passages in Genesis. Not another lot. Despair. The lift soon clocked past 4 or 5 levels and continued to descend. They were moving deep into the ore-laden innards of the wretched earth, down and down with unrelenting symbolism. Afraid so. According to Throsby, the Elohim are aliens who visit Earth in order to assist man's evolution into a spiritual state characterised by inclusiveness, gender equality and social justice. No surprises so far, the sister remarked. She was determined to be unfazed. Yes, but then they turned to Ezekiel and Isaiah and the many-angled motifs of the Messianic promise. The lift reached its top velocity, then began to brake. Don't tell me, said the sister, already guessing. Yep, the second coming. When the patriarchal coal-mining, whale-slaying elites have finally sent the planet down into the pits of ecological trauma by banning wind farms, see Revelation 9:17, Jesus, leader of the Elohim, will arrive in his spaceship and rendezvous with those who are in true fellowship with the feminine earth powers. The lift stopped. The doors parted slowly with a wholesome merit of efficiency. Welcome to the launch centre, sister, said the ex, stepping out. The launch centre indeed, by the festering wounds of St. Aloysius of Gonzaga, a vast technological cabin of piping and wiring securing a lofty rocket ship beeped with lighting unattended. There was a bank of monitors, mission control, the guidance bays, buffers against the mighty thrust, intricate panels, space dials, radar zones on maps of distant constellations, flippers of green and red lights dancing aeronautically under the steam valves, AC pingers with futuristic cadence, complex instrumentation. The centre had been drilled from rock. The spacecraft sat cucumber-like with finely tuned fins and its nose aiming upwards through the shaft towards the circling stars. A whole silo was housed in the gauge, an edifice of secret circuitry wiring the dreams of 21st century man. It was monstrous, huge. So you see, sister, Throsbyites, Catherine Mayfair O'Brien, her husband Tony, the parishioners too, were planning to launch from here and meet up with Jesus or with the Christic energy in orbit this September, provided the rainy season is over by the launch date. The rocket ship spoke for itself. Sister Mello was astounded. She walked across from the lift front to the observation deck and looked out at the massive, sleek craft steaming on its launch pad. It was 100 foot tall, painted in rainbow stripes. It was named the Vatican II, embossed in spacey white lettering on the shank. New worlds of aluminium. Ave Maria, she said, clutching her rosy medallion. Throsby claimed that he had made contact with the mothership, X further explained. According to Throsby, the aliens call the mothership Our Lady, and this has been cleverly encoded into Catholic piety. That's how he knew. The launch centre was testimony to this vision. This is extraordinary, Father, Mello said. Not really, he said. I've seen lots of this. Admittedly, it's more common in New Zealand. Mello was only 3 breaths away from an inadvertent blasphemy. This must have cost them a fortune. Where did they get the money? Lamington drives, said the iffy Dominican, according to the parish accounts. Oh, and a few car boot sales. They had a really successful one last feast of Clement the Tall. It raised over $4 million, it seems. So they were laundering money too. Or else their Lamingtons were sensational. More likely they were laundering money, perhaps, or running a bingo scam and violating all 7 of the ecumenical councils, including the sub-clauses of the Creed of Rose-struck Philomena, not to mention several international treaties on the non-religious use of outer space. And I'm sure this launch silo doesn't have the proper local planning approvals either. X was right. No planning permits had ever been issued. There were violations everywhere, secular and otherwise, especially the plumbing. One of the parish newsletters, it later emerged, had quoted Jim Morrison ahead of the letters of St. Paul. Jaw-dropping, saith the Mellow. Her jaw had dropped. She had never seen anything quite so sophisticated and shiny before. It's a Sterling Saturn V, with more thrust than the cantos of Dante, the father did assure her. By the lost prophecies of Fatima of the Lemon Grove, she said. How ever did they do it? The Padre calmly quoted one of the Desert Fathers, who had said words to the effect that heresy has wings enough to fly into the moon, nearly 2,000 years ahead of his time. After gaping at the edifice, he soon took Sister Mello back to the surface, through the crypt of bishop bones, into the cosy enclosedness of St. Angelina's, a different air. The forensic team were just that minute cutting down the Monsignor. It was a journey of consternation. So, was there a schism, Father? Was there a revolt against the false prophet? Did someone expose him as a fraud? Did someone yield to prayer and realise the glory of dogmatics? Did someone denounce him in a sermon? Did the better conscience of the Catholic soul prevail? What happened? No, Mello. The deaths have got nothing to do with it. A team of paramedics had also rolled the dead Mrs. Mayfair O'Brien onto her back, preparing to lift her body onto a stretcher. What? What do you mean, X? 3 people are dead here. She was finally exasperated. What were the clues? The brassy gadget, the design and premeditation? Very little in the cathedral gave any indication of the elaborate technology beneath. A simple crime of passion, Mello, said X. He finds her with him, he kills her, him kills he, then he strings himself up as a limp noodle out of grief and shame. An epic tale. What? A crime of passion? Are you saying that Monsignor Throsby and Catherine... The sister tried to piece it all together, until her husband Tony finds them reading the Song of Solomon together in the presbytery, dimly lit just this first Wednesday after Epiphany, the feast of St. Vincent with the Lambs, said X, decisive. And then it all went pear-shaped. Pear-shaped? It went totally Protestant. They cancelled the launch. Good heavens, no. Imagine that poisonous trifecta in orbit, Mello. And to think they were seeking a better heaven. It was a hellish prospect for which they might have perhaps been deserving. It had come to the Monsignor as a supernatural visitation. He was alone one night by altar light contemplating the orange book. It all became perfectly clear. God wanted him, like all Noah-ish, to build an S2 manned projectile with a dry weight of about 80,000 pounds, fully fuelled, with which to kiss the sky. Mallow had seen enough. They lugged Mr. Mayfair O'Brien out and started hosing down the flagstones. The sister indicated that she had to go. She and X made their way out past the ambulances to her car, obedient on the crushed gravel drive. "A crime of passion, you say, Xavier?" she said. She still couldn't believe it. "Biblically common," the Padre complained. "Well, it seems like you've got this completely wrapped up," she said. "You woke me up at fuzzy-headed dawn. Why exactly did you want me down here, X? I'm obviously not needed." "Just to see it, Mello, with your own eyes." "So you didn't need my help?" "Good heavens, no." The iffy Dominican smiled. From this angle, she looked up against the tower, now realising that it revealed nothing of its hidden compact deep below. Not a thing. Were the congregation suspecting? Who knew about the sombre mosaic? Getting back outside, it was threatening to rain again. The heavy turpentine air, the pine forest, the weedy tennis court. The wind pushed against the bristling needles in metaphorical whispers. It is shocking, she considered, how the depraved tentacles of heresy might seem so ordinary and fresh in an unadorned rural fringe setting with basic amenities. "You don't need to convince me of anything, Father. Since I've been working with you, I've seen it all." She was emphatic. It often felt that way. "The question," pondered X aloud, "is whether they made contact, isn't it?" She reached the pale butter Volvo and stopped. She had to shake her head. "What do you mean? Contact? Contact with who?" The wind started to pick up. More whispers. "Whoever," he said. "You're not taking this seriously, are you, Father?" asked Mello. The iffy Dominican looked over his shoulder. He swung around in his almost famous plain grey coat. They were alone. "Look at this stuff, Mello. These people were onto something, weren't they? You don't build all of this just because you're loopy." Mallow considered such a loaded proposition, and exercising her prerogatives concluded that it was contrary to her training. Clay Adam and Pearly Eve, after all, lost their entire wadding. They didn't just make a slight mistake. Once again, she felt her partner might have been investigating whack jobs for a little too long. Who did he work for again? Who was this someone quite close to the Pope? She started closing her car door as she said, "Yes, you do, Father. Yes, you do." This, as always, was where they disagreed.